Most people get stuck in a job that they hate because they don't understand the math behind financial freedom. In today's video, I'm going to walk you through that math. I'm going to reveal to you the mistake that the vast majority of people are making when it comes to building wealth. And then I'm going to share with you 5 actionable tips that you can use to build your wealth properly and achieve financial freedom sooner than you could imagine. 5 tips, by the way, that I used to quit my job, leave behind a 6-figure salary, and still move across the world, travel when I want, and build my wealth all in the process. And so without further ado, let's dive in. What's up everyone? This is Brandon from Wealth Potion, and if you're new to the channel, Wealth Potion is all about teaching you personal finance and wealth building in a fun, easy, and simple way, because these are all things that we should have learned in school, but we didn't. And today's video is inspired by the many conversations that I have, mostly with young adults who are just starting out their career or have been in their careers for 5 to 10 years, but they constantly feel like they're falling behind, like they're not building their wealth fast enough, or they don't feel ready to settle down and have kids because of financial reasons. And when I have these conversations, it usually boils down to the statement along the lines of, if only I were making more money. If only I could get that raise at my job or move to a better company that would pay me more, then all of my financial worries would go away. And that is the #1 mistake I see people doing, which is they focus so much on earning more money through their salary. Don't get me wrong, that is an important concept within personal finance. I have a whole YouTube playlist around career advice, and many of those videos are about how to ask for a raise, how to interview for a higher paying job, and so on and so forth. But there's a problem in that mindset, which is if you focus only on the income side of the equation, you could be spending all of your income and not building any wealth at all. And so that brings me to the core concept in today's video, which is the math behind financial freedom, or in other words, early retirement. Because what is financial freedom at the end of the day? For most people, I'd say it's achieving an amount of wealth where they do not have to work anymore. That might not mean retirement in the classical sense. It might mean that you're work optional, or it might mean that you quit your job and start your own business like I'm doing. Or perhaps you just want to take a 2 or 3 year sabbatical and then you can return to your career refreshed and renewed. Whatever that is, that's what I'm going to call financial freedom for the rest of this video. And this is where we have to look at the math, because the math behind financial freedom is absolutely mind-blowing. It's a concept I've talked about before, and it's a concept I will talk about again and again and again until it is drilled into your brains, because when I first learned this, it absolutely blew my world apart. Because the fact of the matter is, the date that you achieve financial freedom is solely dependent on how much of your income you save as a percentage. It does not matter how much money in dollar terms you are earning per year. Let me demonstrate this with an example to make this more clear. Imagine 2 people, Alex and Jamie. Alex is making $150,000 per year after tax and is saving 20% of his income. Jamie, on the other hand, only makes $50,000 a year, but he is saving 50% of his income. Who do you think will achieve financial freedom first? You might be surprised that it is not Alex. It is not the person that is making 3 times as much income. It is Jamie, because of how much of his salary he is saving. In fact, it's not just a little bit sooner. Alex will achieve financial freedom in 37 years, and Jamie will achieve financial freedom in 17 years, in less than half the time. The reason for this is because of how much they are spending. Because Jamie is spending so much less money to fuel his lifestyle, the amount of money that he needs to have saved and invested in order to quit his job and live purely off of his investment income is so much lower than Alex's. And of course, at this point, I know what many of you might be thinking. Well, the lifestyle between the two is going to be significantly different. I mean, Alex is saving 20%, which means he's spending 80%, which is $120,000 per year, whereas Jamie is living off of only $25,000 per year. Of course, you could make the argument that Alex is living a more comfortable lifestyle, but the point here is that if you solely prioritize your lifestyle and living a more comfortable life here and now, you are sacrificing your future lifestyle, because now Jamie can retire 2 decades earlier. He can then start the business that he's always wanted to start and completely change the trajectory of his life in a way that Alex cannot. Alex is a slave to his paycheck. The second point here is that, of course, I am using an example that uses a pretty extreme difference, but the real message here is even a 5% or 10% increase in the amount of your income that you're saving can make a massive difference, and it can mean that you can achieve financial freedom years earlier than you otherwise would. And this is a perfect opportunity to mention that I've put together a free tool for exactly this purpose. As I was writing this script and this article and putting together this video, I thought, wouldn't it be great if there was a tool that you could literally plug in your post-tax income, the savings rate that you're currently at, and then it will calculate how much money and investments you need to have to be financially free and at what date you can achieve that. And then I took it a step further and I said, what if you increased your current savings rate by 10% so that you can literally see how much faster you could achieve financial freedom. This is a free tool. I just posted it on my website. I'll include the link in the description and in the top comment. All you need to do is sign up for the Wealth Potion newsletter and I will send you the calculator to your inbox right away. All that to say, my point here is not that you need to live like a hermit or a monk and cut away all of your expenses, but I want to point out that all of that energy that you're spending focused on increasing your income by trying to get that next raise or switch jobs to something that's higher paying, those are all helpful, but they're not something you have full control over. Your expenses and your lifestyle is something that you have 100% control over, whether you like it or not. So now I'm gonna share with you my 5 actionable tips that I used myself to cut my expenses by over 50%, so by over half, which allowed me to quit my job, leave behind a 6-figure salary, move across the world, and start my own business. And I'm gonna rank order them in terms of the most important or most impactful to your expenses to perhaps the less important. The first tip is to relocate. And this touches on the video I posted earlier this week. You can check it out here. You do not need to do what I did. You don't need to move from Toronto to Seoul, but as I mentioned, I moved to Seoul. My lifestyle is virtually the same. I'm eating out perhaps more often than I did in Toronto, and I'm spending probably less than half I was in Toronto, Canada. For you, that might mean moving to another city. That might mean simply moving further away from the city center. And the reason this is actionable tip number 1 is because your rent or your mortgage payments are usually your largest expense by a large margin. So if you can reduce that by getting a roommate, by moving somewhere else, by moving countries, you can cut your expenses by a massive amount. And that relates to actionable tip number 2, which is if it's hard for you to make that big move, I would recommend exploring location-independent work or remote work. As I shared in the past, I worked in a tech startup for a long time, but I used to work in sales. And part of my journey as I prepared for my move from Toronto to Seoul is that I shifted from sales, which is a remote job, but does rely on you being in the same time zone as clients, to a more location independent role. I moved into product marketing where I worked more with an internal team who was able to accommodate to my difference in time zone. If I had stayed in sales, it would have been a lot harder for me to make that move. That being said, if you work at a big company, sales can actually be a great remote work opportunity because large companies often have offices abroad or in other cities within your country. So you could explore other locations of work without even having to move jobs. And of course, I know at this point that remote work is not available for everybody. If you work in the trades or if you work in person at a cafe or in hospitality, you have to be there at a physical location. That being said, you can still look for locations that tie into actionable tip number 1. If you work at a cafe, you can find a cafe that will employ you in a place that the cost of living is not as high. Actionable tip number 3, create a budget. I know it's boring. I know you've heard it from every finance influencer and content creator on YouTube, but the reason a budget is so important is because it's very hard to improve something when you aren't measuring it. This is why when people are losing weight or trying to put on muscle mass, the number 1 tip most fitness influencers talk about is to count your calories because you need to measure the thing that you want to increase or decrease. In this case, if you want to decrease your expenses, you need to start tracking your expenses. And this does not need to be some complex multi-sheet budget. It can be as simple as logging into your bank account, checking what you've been paying for over the last month, and then putting that into a spreadsheet where you can look at the total. And by the way, if there's interest in a budgeting guide or template, Another reason you should sign up for the Wealth Potion newsletter, because that is another resource that I'm working on and will be releasing very soon. So stay tuned for that. Number 4 is cancel a subscription. We live in a subscription economy. Everything is becoming a subscription. For those of you that are millennials or a little bit older, you remember when you had CD albums and CD-ROMs. You would buy the CD and then you'd own the music. And everyone talked about how iTunes and Spotify was going to revolutionize things because then you have access to an unlimited library, which is true, but the cost of that is that you're paying a monthly subscription. You're paying $15, $20, $25 per month for access to that library. And nowadays, you can get access to all that same music for free online, and you don't have to be pirating it. I'm not condoning illegal activity here, but my point is you can cancel some of these subscriptions that are really a luxury at the end of the day. This is something that I did recently. A lot of my friends think I'm crazy for canceling Spotify. They're like, what? How do you listen to music? I go on YouTube. YouTube has tons of music. Yeah, you have to listen to an ad here or there, but to me, that's worth the $15 a month that I'm saving. And that is just one example. There are tons of subscription fees. I'm sure if you look at your bank statement, you might be surprised at how much you are paying monthly for various digital services. And last but not least, if the first 4 actionable tips didn't resonate with you or you don't feel like doing them, at the very least, pay yourself first. You may have heard this phrase before, but it's quite simple. Every time you get a paycheck or at the first of every month, take a portion of your paycheck, say 10% to start, maybe 20% if you're feeling bold, and set your bank account up so that it automatically goes into a savings account that you cannot touch. Or better yet, since you want to invest that money, you can check out this video that I posted very recently about passive investing. You can set it up in a way where your bank account connects to a brokerage account where you're automatically depositing money into your brokerage account and buying a stock, an index ETF, or Bitcoin at an automatic recurring rate. Because look, I get it, making a change in your life, especially something as significant as spending less money, is hard and it requires discipline. By setting up automatic systems, you can cheat yourself by not having to rely on human discipline because it's automatic. You don't have to touch it and you're automatically saving money every single month. As a reminder, if you want a free calculator where you can plug in your income and your savings rate and it can spit out the exact date at which you will achieve financial freedom, just click the link in the description, sign up with your email, and I will send you that free calculator which you can start using right away. My goal with Wealth Potion from day one was to help as many people as I could achieve financial freedom. So this calculator is going to be the first of many tools and resources and guides that I'm going to put out there for your use. I'd love to hear your feedback. Always leave comments. Let me know how I'm doing. Let me know what questions you have. And if you enjoyed this video, if this was helpful to you, I greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel or share this video with a friend or a relative or a loved one that you want to help achieve financial freedom faster. Until next time, thank you for watching.